Hello Year 11, it's Miss Saul, Head of English at KA's Academy. I'm just putting together some videos for you for today so that we can carry on with our writing to express a viewpoint scheme of learning that you've been doing with your main English teacher. So as I know, this is not ideal, but luckily in some ways this topic does lend itself fairly well to being taught through videos as well. So that's what I'm going to try and do today. To teach you and introduce you to how to structure an effective piece of persuasive writing using the structure known as Ethos-Logos-Pathos-Conclusion, which some of you may have heard of before. So basically, this is a four-part structure, as the name suggests, and you will write roughly one paragraph for each of these sections. So I'm going to ask you to pause this video now and watch this other link, which is also on your Show My Homework assignment, to watch just an introduction to what Ethos Logos Pathos is before we move on. So if you want to pause this video now, watch that video. It's only 3 or 4 minutes long, I believe, and then join me back here in a second where I will talk you through it in more detail. Okay, so hopefully that video made some sort of sense to you, and hopefully now what I'm about to say will make it even clearer. So as I said before, there are 4 parts to the structure of writing to express a viewpoint, and each part is a different section of your writing, and normally a paragraph for each section. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to make some notes. So you might want to pause me if you need to go and find some lined paper, find a pen, making notes as neatly as you would in your exercise book so that we can stick those into your exercise books when you come back. Maybe only writing on one side of A4 paper so that it's easy to stick in. I'm going to talk you through each section of Ethos-Logos-Pathos-Conclusion, and I would like you to make some notes, and you can pause me as much as you like. I'd like you to make some notes of what each section needs you to do. What's the purpose of each section? So, firstly, ethos. Ethos is your introduction, and basically it lays out why are you arguing, what are you arguing for, who you are, and why it is that you've got a vested interest in this, but for not just yourself, but for everyone else as well. So you're introducing who you are and why we should listen to you. Why is this an important issue? What are you arguing for? So not just what you're arguing against, but also, okay, so you're against this, so what do you want to see happen? And sort of getting on your high horse a bit. This is the bit where you make it really clear that you're quite passionate about this. This is quite an important issue, and you're really emphasizing that in your introductory ethos paragraph. So it's outlining exactly why this is such an important issue and what it is that you're arguing for. So everyone knows what you're arguing for. Okay, so if you want to, you can pause me for a second to get some notes down about what ethos does. That's your first section. Okay. And then I would leave a little bit of a space, just 1 or 2 lines underneath ethos, because we're going to add some notes in a little while. And I'm going to introduce you to logos. So logos will be your second section. This is where you introduce. So you've made your point, but now you're going to provide evidence to support your point. You're going to say, okay, but I could just be making this all up. So the evidence is going to speak for itself now. And then I'm going to provide you with some facts, some statistics, and I'm going to explain what those demonstrate. So what realistic evidence could you provide? What could you say is out there that supports your point? When it's relevant, is there an expert that you could make reference to, possibly even quote, that supports your point? Always explaining afterwards what it is that you've just demonstrated with that piece of evidence. And what does this really show, and how does this really further your argument? So you have to kind of assume that your reader or your audience, if you're doing a speech, can't work anything out for themselves. So you have to state everything very, very clearly. You can't just assume that because you've given them a statistic, they're going to work out that that proves your point. You need to actually explain how and why that proves your point. Okay, so that's logos. Again, you can pause me if you like to take some notes and then leave a couple of lines underneath so that we can add something later. And then we'll go on to pathos in just a second. Okay, so pathos. Pathos is, it means sort of the emotions, okay? So whereas logos is logic, okay, so the reasoning behind your points, and ethos is why you're arguing for it. The pathos, the emotion, means you need to now appeal to people's sense of duty and morality and emotion, and paint a picture of the future, sort of making them realize how bad it could get if we don't do what you suggest. And why will it be good in the future if we do what you suggest? So you're kind of manipulating, I suppose, by appealing to our better natures and appealing to what it is that we'd like to see in the future, and pointing out that if we do what you're suggesting, we would get that, so that people are more convinced and more persuaded to agree with you. So that's the purpose of pathos. So again, pause me for a second, copy down some notes, leave a couple of lines, and then we'll go on to conclusion, which is the last section. So the last section, as I said, is conclusion. This tends to be slightly shorter than the other three because it's kind of you wrapping it up, as the word conclusion suggests. So this is where you sum up exactly what it is. Then once again, I'm going to remind you what it is that you want to change or to see happen. What is it that you would like us to do? Trying to sort of maybe making it sound urgent, like we must do it soon before it's too late. Top tip there is to use the collective pronoun we rather than you, so it sounds like we're all in this together, and basically leave us with this sense of, so what is it that we now, having been persuaded by you, need to go and do, or need to make sure we support more. So it's making it very, very clear at the end of your persuasive argument, what is it that we need to now go away and do, and obviously trying to make it sound very important and often very urgent before it is too late. So that's the purpose of conclusion, summing up. So I'm going to stop talking for a second again so that you can copy down notes about that. And like I said, we'll need some space at the end of it too. So pause me for a second. Okay, so we've got our notes on the 4 sections of our persuasive writing, but we have just done some work on the theirs techniques, the persuasive techniques, the tricolon, the hyperbole, the emotive language, the imperatives, rhetorical questions, and statistics and facts. So we've done that in class, and we need to be clear which persuasive techniques lend themselves best to the purpose of each of these sections. So in ethos, quite often, the theirs techniques that often work well here are rhetorical questions. So you can often start with a rhetorical question or end with a rhetorical question, which you would then immediately answer with the answer you'd want everyone to have. And it's quite an effective way of introducing the issue that you want to persuade us on. Hyperbole is also, so getting on your high horse, getting a bit passionate about it, lends itself well to hyperbole. Just being a little bit exaggerated with how important it is and how passionate you feel about it. Okay, so hyperbole lends itself quite well to this issue too. And then imperatives are quite a good way to start because it makes it sound like already time is ticking. We need to do something sooner rather than later, and it makes it sound more important. Okay, so it's not to say that you couldn't use other techniques in theirs, but these work quite well, and so often are seen in the ethos section. So maybe make a note of that underneath your ethos notes. Then we've got the theirs techniques that often work well in logos. So no surprise really, it's statistics and facts because they're the things we're going to use to provide evidence with. And tricolon is also quite effective. So when we're trying to explain why something is the way it is, when we're trying to provide facts, actually putting them in threes or 3 explanations is quite an effective way to sort of drive it home, if you like. So tricolon often works well in the logos section too. And like I said, that doesn't mean that you couldn't use a rhetorical question here, but just often you would find statistics and facts and tricolon. Okay, so that's logos. Make a quick note of which techniques you might want to try and use there. But as I said, it's not limited to. Then we're moving on to pathos and the there's techniques. Again, there won't be much of a surprise here. There's techniques that often work well here. It's going to be emotive language because you're appealing to their sense of morality. You're appealing to their sense of feeling bad if we let the future end up not what we would like, for it looking quite bad. And also what goes hand in hand with emotive language is some more hyperbole. We often exaggerate slightly when we use emotive language to make it sound slightly worse than in reality it would be, or slightly better than in reality it would be. So those two techniques often go hand in hand and lend themselves really well to pathos section. Then finally, with conclusion, a rhetorical question again, in the same way that you maybe would use it in ethos, is quite a good way to introduce your conclusion. So after all of this, are we really going to not consider recycling plastic in the future? Of course we are, because I've just made all of these points. So you're illustrating what it is that we're all going to conclude by starting with a rhetorical question and then answering it as your conclusion, if that makes sense. The other thing that lends itself really well to conclusion is the imperative. So making it sound urgent that as we go away from your persuasive argument, we must act sooner rather than later, because time is of the essence. We do need to get something changed, or we need to do something in order to ensure the future that we want, rather than perhaps the one that we don't. So make sure you've got your notes down about which there's techniques often work well. But as I said, it's not limited to, it's just sort of pushing you in the right direction to start thinking about which ones you might use where. Okay, so almost at the end of this video. This one's quite a short one. There's another video that I'd quite like you to watch on YouTube, which is a 3-minute video of a UN speech, United Nations speech, given by Leonardo DiCaprio. So he was a UN ambassador for peace. The link is here, which you can copy and paste into YouTube, or the link is also on Show My Homework, so you can go straight from Show My Homework. And whilst you're watching this video, as I said, it's only about 3 to 4 minutes, look for the Ethos-Logos-Pathos structure with his brief conclusion at the end, because once you know about this structure, you'd be surprised how often you hear it in presentations and speeches, particularly when they're trying to get you to do something. And Leonardo DiCaprio, in his speech, uses this structure very, very well and very effectively. So listening out to sort of spot where he's doing the things that ethos do, where he's doing giving the facts and statistics for his logos, etc., etc. You can also look out for some of the there's techniques that he uses, because again, now that you know about them, you will spot them time and time again in people's persuasive presentations. When they're trying to get you to do something, some of these techniques will always sneak in. So see if you can identify some of those too. Once you've done that, come back to me and I will explain what we're going to do next. Okay, so finally, there is a copy of a speech waggle that, if you can possibly, I would like you to go and print so that you have this in front of you to annotate for our next video. The next video, so you've been set 2 for today, the next video, the second video, will look at this waggle of a speech in response to the following question. The question is, young people should focus on education, school students should not be allowed to have jobs. Okay, so you're given a statement and then you're told to write a speech to your school governors in response to this statement. So remember, in the exam, you will always be given a statement, okay, so a claim if you like, and you then need to decide whether you're going to agree with it. So, yep, I'm going to prove basically why this statement is correct all the way through my persuasive argument, or you're going to choose to argue against it and you're going to explain why this is a bad idea. What it is that you want is to actually see that school students are allowed to have jobs, and here are all the beneficial reasons why. You must pick a side. Okay, there's no sitting on the fence. There's no, I'm going to talk about the good and the bad of both sides. No, pick a side. Okay, decide it straight away, and then tailor your whole argument in support of that side of the argument. Okay, so so you'll get a statement, you pick a side, and then there will be an instruction underneath in this case, to write a speech to your school governors, you'll be asked to do one of three things, either to write a speech, to write an article, or to write a letter. And we will look at each of those text types in turn. At the moment, we're just going to focus on speeches. And they will always give you an audience that you're writing to, like you're writing to your head teacher, you're writing to your school governors, you're writing to a national newspaper, for instance. All in all, though, all it means is you need to write formally. Okay, you're making a formal argument. So this is the kind of question you will get in the exam. This is what the next video will look at, a waggle response to this question. And there will be then a video for each part of Ethos, Logos, Pathos and Conclusion. That's going to come up on Monday, where we're going to watch them all so that you make notes on your copy of the waggle to better understand the purpose of each part. So the next video is just going to look at ethos today, and then next week on Monday we will look at logos, pathos and conclusion. Okay, so this is the end of this video. Please try and get a copy of the speech waggle printed in front of you before you watch the second video. If you can't, I do understand. We're all in difficult, unusual situations. So please do watch the video, even if you can't have a copy in front of you that you can annotate. Watch it anyway, because it will be valuable to see each part being explained in turn. Okay, so I'll see you in a minute on the next video. Thanks, guys.